Welcome. Welcome again. I'd like to take another look at another word study, just for a few minutes. And this word study is a word in the Greek that means divine woodcutters. So let's get our text. If we go to Philippians chapter 1, verse 12, and if you want to turn there, we'll read there together, or you can look at it with me. It says here, Paul said, but I would, you should understand. Paul said, I want you to understand something. He said, brethren, that the things which happened to me have fallen out rather to the furtherance of the gospel. He said, I want you to know something. I want you to understand something, that these things that have happened to me, this imprisonment, this trouble, this trial, this tribulation that's in my life, he said it's to the furtherance of the gospel. It's worked out to further the gospel, not hinder it, not derail it, or to lessen it, weaken it, or anything like that, but to further it. So the word we want to look at today, just for a few minutes, is furtherance. For that word furtherance in the Greek is the word which meant or means divine woodcutters. So it was used in the first century for just that, the divine woodcutters. They were the ones who would go ahead of the army along the journey, and they would be ahead of them, and they would be cutting through the wood, a path so that they could further their advance, so that they could move more quickly, that they could, march on, so to speak. So it is that concept that this word furtherance is used by Paul here. It is the divine woodcutters in this sense. They are divine of God, moving forward, cutting a path that the gospel, even in the hindrances of his life, they were divine woodcutters. They were furthering the gospel. So it was for the furtherance, the path cutting. So if we consider Paul's state, he was imprisoned in Rome. He was, his liberty, he had no liberty, or his liberties were taken away. He was chained to a Roman soldier, Roman guard, day and night. He was, not free to come, not free to go. He wasn't at liberty. He was, imprisoned. He was in prison. So it was in this state that he said, don't worry, the gospel is being furthered. There's divine woodcutters going before me, and they're making a way. They're opening the path that the gospel can spread. As a matter of fact, he said that his hindrances were to the furtherance of the gospel. They were for the furtherance of the gospel, for the woodcutters were making a way, a path for him to spread the gospel. The Praetorian Guard was constantly witness to him preaching to the visitors, preaching to them, and they were constantly hearing it, and the gospel was being spread. There's an old saying that says, all roads lead to Rome. Well, and that is true, I'm sure. At that time period, for sure it was, because Rome built the roads. But at the same time, the reverse of that is true as well, that all roads may lead to Rome, but all roads from Rome lead to the known world. And Paul's imprisonment was a blessing in disguise. In this case, it was a furtherance. It was an opportunity for the divine woodcutters to cut wood, to cut through the obstacles, cut through the hindrances. And I'd like to leave you with this little thought of what was said in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 9. 2 Corinthians chapter 12 and verse 9. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. This is the Lord speaking to Paul. He said, my grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in weakness. And then Paul said, most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory. Paul said, I'd rather glory in my infirmities, in my inabilities, my weaknesses, my lackings, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. So Paul understood, and he used a powerful imagery here when he said that the gospel was furthered, or the furtherance of the gospel was occurring because there was divine woodcutters cutting a path before him. Even in imprisonment, even in restricted movement, even when he couldn't go where he wanted to go, do what he wanted to do, when he was limited in his liberty, the gospel was not hindered by any of that. And so it is today. The gospel is not hindered by any limitation that the government places upon us. The gospel is not hindered by any limitation of the situation of time we're living in today. The gospel is not hindered because there are good divine woodcutters cutting a path so the will of God can be accomplished. God bless you.